We've been contacted by people throughout Britain who are desperate to have their family mysteries resolved.
I'd like to find out a little bit about my father's time in the RAF during the Second World War.
I'm trying to find my husband's grandmother's older brother. I know he was married, I know he had 2 children. On one of his children's marriage certificates, he's deceased, and on the other, he isn't. I can't find anything more about him.
And here to help is our team of genealogical and historical experts. Ancestry genealogist Brad Argent.
And there's one final thing that I want to leave you with.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, my God.
Who's that?
Spitting image of my little girl.
Historian and law lecturer Onyeka Nubia.
Robert Andrew Hall is somewhere in this photograph.
Wow.
But first, historian and writer Tessa Dunlop, who's hoping to shed light on a transatlantic family mystery.
My name is Lindsay McLoughlin. I'm from Nottingham. I've been doing some research into my family tree, and I've been able to figure out who my great-grandparents are, but my great-grandmother, on my mother's side, I've not been able to figure out much about her. So we don't know where she was born, although we've had it trickle down through the family that she might have been born in America. And I haven't been able to find anything out about any further back on her side of the family because of that. So I'm here to try and find out more about my great-grandmother.
Lindsay, thank you for coming to the show and bringing this mystery of a great-grandmother that I think your mother, Elaine, and you have been trying to unknot.
Yes, we have.
So we've got a Mary Agnes Hames.
Yes.
And why does she interest you if you know nothing about her?
I've been able to trace back a lot of my family lines, but Mary's is one that's just been cut short with a brick wall, and I can't find anything further, so I'm really keen to try and figure out what I can about her.
OK. We have found her marriage certificate, which confirms that Mary Agnes Hames married a Herbert Greenhow.
Yep.
And we can see there down to Lindsay.
Yep.
Of Nottinghamshire fame. The reason we know, of course, of that marriage, not just because it led to the arrival of your grandfather, but because there is a marriage certificate to prove it. 1926, marriage solemnised in West Derby, and here we have Herbert with Mary. Now, the reason this is relevant in terms of our search is because her father is cited.
Yes.
OK? And that's where we have a William Hames, deceased, you can see, by the time she gets married in 1926. And in a rather flamboyant fashion, he is a professor of languages, no less. So she marries a plumber, but her father's a professor of languages. May I suggest that might be perceived as something of a step down? But let's find out more about this William Hames.
Yeah.
I wonder if you know what this is.
Or is that a ship passenger list?
It is a ship passenger list, indeed. The man in question is 36 years old, none other than William Hames. He's born in 1857 in Middle England, but by now he is heading for America, and it's 1889.
OK.
And he arrives in the city of Philadelphia. Now, by 1890, Philadelphia was a thriving, growing city, one of the biggest in America. After the Civil War, huge numbers of immigrants arrived, so a place where there would be huge numbers of languages. He lands a job as a director of the Berlitz School of Languages.
Wow.
So he had a plum job. He was doing very well. And as a man with a plum job, naturally, had a wife to go with it. We know this because he's in the census. 10 years later, here's the Philadelphia census of 1900. And you can see where it has been highlighted. William is married to a Mary. We know from the documentation that he married Mary 10 years earlier, so very shortly after his arrival in Philadelphia, he gets married.
OK.
If you look, they live with one other person. Can you see?
Yeah.
Who do you make her out as?
Mary Mackay?
That's right. She's from Greenock in Scotland.
Oh, OK.
She's 14 years old and she's a servant. So we have head of the family, wife and servant. And if you look along at the highlighted zeros, which is under the column of children, they don't have any. All right, bearing in mind we are looking for a daughter with the same name as her mother.
Yeah.
There are a lot of Marys. I've got to flag up at this point. We have servant Mary, wife Mary, and we're hunting for a daughter called Mary. But there isn't one, as you can see on this form, which means we need to keep going to look at a future census. They have by now been married 9 or 10 years. So if they were going to have children, it's likely they would have arrived. Let's look at the census from 1910. And here we have Mary Hames, a boarder, living on her own. And you can also see that she still doesn't have any children. Do you see?
Yeah.
The 2 zeros in those columns? So we have a childless woman on her own, which suggests one of 2 things. She's been abandoned or she's widowed. If you go back 1 year to 1909, we find William Hames's death certificate. Are you understanding the problem that we've come across here? The roadblock. Well, we've got William identified through your great-grandmother's marriage certificate as her father, and there is only one William G. Hames, and we've tracked him to Philadelphia, but he doesn't have a child with his wife. So where is this mythical Mary who goes back to England and marries a plumber? She's missing. He, in his will, doesn't leave any money to a child.
Okay.
Just to his wife.
Okay.
Mystery. Let's go back to the census of 1900. And on that census, we have 2 Marys, don't we?
Yeah.
One Mary's his wife, and one Mary is his servant girl, aged 14.
Coming up, having confirmed that Lindsay's family do indeed trace back to America, Tessa will next solve the mystery of her great-grandmother's birth.
I wasn't expecting that kind of scandal.
Next, ancestry genealogist Brad Argent is trying to help a family uncover more about their New Zealand heritage. Eve Wilkinson and her son Alan are here to discover if there's truth in a long-standing family rumour. Was Eve's grandmother, Evelyn, adopted from a Maori tribe?
Alan started researching the family tree and got as far back as Grandma, and it was found out she was adopted. And after that, the trail just goes dead.
What we'd really love to know is where she really comes from. Do we know who her parents were? Were we, as the family tale goes, Maori, or were we in fact part of the white colonists that came over from England?
Alan, Eve, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Now, I understand that you're here to try and break through a brick wall you've had for some time about your granny, Evelyn, your great-grandmother.
Yeah.
You know she was born in New Zealand around 1907 and adopted out, and that she could possibly be of Maori extraction. Is that right?
That's right, but literally, that is the brick wall. That is all we really know up until she got married to my great-granddad.
So, Alan, this is the family tree. So, Alan, we start with you, and then, Eve, we'll go up to you here, and then we go step back to Lorna, your mum, and then back to Evelyn Sisson. And so she's the one that we're trying to find out more about.
She is the enigma of the family.
These days, it's so much easier to look at your DNA and get a sense of, OK, where did my ancestors come from? So your DNA, Eve, is probably the best one to look at because it's going to give us the closest we can get to Evelyn. So let's just zoom in and have a bit of a look at where this is pointing to. We've got a big chunk in the UK, there's a bit of Scandinavian, there's a little bit of Irish or Celtic DNA, but no Polynesian, which we would expect to see if there was some Maori in there, particularly more recent. I would have expected it here. It's not there, but there's other things that DNA can tell us. Now, it might sound a bit incongruous to what we've been talking about, but believe me, it will fall into place. These are Hessian soldiers, right? They're actually German soldiers. And these soldiers, they're probably like mercenaries, and they were used by the English all the time. There's one of these soldiers, a gentleman by the name of George Otto. He had quite a large family, and one of those daughters he had, Eliza, she made her way to New Zealand. And so when we looked at your DNA, there's a lot of connections that you've got that have this Eliza Otto in their tree. And so from the detailed analysis of your DNA results, we're pretty convinced that there's a strong connection between Evelyn and the Hessian soldiers, and we think it's through that line. This is the family tree, and what we can see here is Evelyn Sisson, your granny, and then Eliza Otto and George Otto. So we're kind of getting a little bit closer now to cracking the nut. So
it's
just
definitely gone a different angle than we expected, yes. I thought if we weren't Maori, we'd have probably been English colonial, but never expected ending up coming from Germany.
let's just focus a little bit more on Evelyn. So this is Evelyn's post-adoption birth certificate. Now, what that is it's a birth certificate that is reissued once somebody is adopted, and it replaces the name of the birth parents with the name of the adopted parent. And what we can see here is the names of the adoptive parents. For the first time, we get to see Thomas Sisson and Ellen Mary Sisson. What is wonderful about this, and you can see it highlighted there, is her birth name, Evelyn Mariner Smith, or Smythe. But what about the pre-adoption birth certificate? Because when she was adopted, she was almost 4 years old.
We didn't know that. I didn't realise that, no.
So there was a time period when she would have, she would have been born, she was staying with her mother and that. So there is a traditional, pre-adoption birth record. It confirms what we saw on the post-adoption record in terms of her name and her birth date. But if we zoom in, you can see it gives us details of who her mother is. This is your great-grandmother, Eve. Mary Jane Smythe. She's 18, and she was born in New Zealand.
And that's my middle name, Mary. So it all connects.
The fact that your great-grandmother, Mary Jane Smythe, was a Kiwi, right? That her daughter, your granny, was a Kiwi because she was born there too.
I mean, but at least we know we were definitely Kiwis.
How do you feel, Eve?
I don't know. Now I want to know why she was adopted.
Well, the journey's only just begun.
Oh.
So they now know their ancestors are part Kiwi and part German. Brad's not stopping there, though, as later he'll be offering an insight into Evelyn's adoption.
I was not expecting to actually be able to see a photo of her. It is just absolutely fantastic.
But first, back to Lindsay's story. Tessa Dunlop has traced her great-great-grandfather, William Hames, to Philadelphia. Now, she wants to reveal the mystery of William's daughter, Mary.
So we have head of the family, William, wife, and servant. Okay. So where is this mythical Mary? She's missing.
Yeah.
We know that within 8 years, William's going to be dead, aged 51. Okay? Meanwhile, Mary Mackay, working for Master William Hames, gets married in 1904 to a Charles Braun who comes from Bohemia in Austria. We can't find him anywhere in any record with one exception: the birth certificate of a Mary Agnes Braun, born the same year as young Mary Mackay from Greenock gets married. So So she gets married and has a baby within 7 months.
Okay.
But there's something very fishy about the man she gets married to, because he doesn't come with a paper trail that you'd expect, which suggests there may have been something of a cover-up around the arrival of baby Mary in 1904, when Mary, the mother, would have been 17, 18 years old.
Yeah.
We think this baby Mary Agnes Braun was the daughter of William Hames, the Master of Languages and the Master of the House. There are 2 reasons, and one is your DNA results.
Okay.
And your results had 3 fourth cousin matches with the name Mackay.
Okay.
Which suggests that it's quite likely Mary Mackay was the mother of Mary Agnes Braun Hames, who was also the daughter of William Hames.
Yeah. Okay.
There's another, I think probably more conclusive document, and that is the 1921 will of Mary Agnes Hames Sr., in other words, William's wife, who presumably wasn't fertile, OK? But look at her will. This is the last will and testament for Mary Agnes Howlett Hames. If you go down to the highlighted bit, she refers to my adopted daughter, Mary Agnes Braun, your great-grandmother.
Wow. Oh, yeah, I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting that kind of scandal.
It's a bit of a scandal.
It is a bit of a scandal.
We have a teenage servant girl, an infertile wife, and an active Master of Languages. And as a result, we get baby Mary Agnes Hames, who interestingly clearly knows about this story. She gets the money because she's referred to in the will as Mary Agnes Braun, but we know that 5 years later when she gets married, she's calling herself Hames.
Yeah.
So I think, happy ending.
Yeah.
And also, lest we forget, she gets a lump of cash, surely. She's going to be quite well off.
That's probably why she married a plumber.
Yeah, she could marry for love.
Exactly.
So, in summary, Mary Agnes, your great-grandmother, was indeed born in America, in Philadelphia, to a servant from Scotland, also called Mary, who worked for your great-great-grandfather, William George Hames.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you very much for uncovering all of that for me.
Thank you so much for bringing
Thank you.
what was really an exciting journey across the Atlantic and back.
I feel good about the fact that I now know where Mary Agnes Hames comes from and that I've kind of fit that little piece into the jigsaw puzzle, but there's a lot more that I still need to kind of unwrap now, and I feel like it's opened a door that was closed, and there's plenty of doors beyond it that I can now explore and try and find out more about that part of the family.
Little did Lindsay know that by searching for details of her great-grandmother Mary's life, she would actually learn of a century-long secret about Mary's scandalous birth. Earlier, Brad confirmed to Eve and her son Alan that Eve's grandmother was born in New Zealand before being adopted.
If we zoom in, you can see it gives us details of who her mother is. This is your great-grandmother, Eve. Mary Jane Smythe. She's 18, and she was born in New Zealand.
He's also revealed they were descended from German Hessian soldiers.
Never expected anything odd coming from Germany.
Now it's up to Brad to unravel the events that led to Eve's grandmother's adoption.
So we know Evelyn Mariner Smythe. We know when she was born. We know who adopted her. We've got confirmation of that. We're reasonably confident that the biological father was from this Otto line, the Hessian soldiers. And so we looked at Mary Jane a little bit, her mum.
Yeah.
And here she's quite young. She's 18. She's obviously had your granny out of wedlock, and she had her for about 3 or 4 years before she put her up for adoption. At the time that she was adopting out her daughter, she was getting married. Look, it's really difficult to put yourself in that situation. Who knows, her husband might have said, well, I'm happy to marry you, but that's not my child. I don't want to bring up that child. She might have made that decision independently. Her parents might have pressured her to do that so she could get married. There's a whole bunch of things that might have happened. So now we come to this photo. This is Thomas, and this is Ellen Sisson. These were the two people who adopted Evelyn, who took her into their lives. And they became your great-grandparents. This is a story that starts in New Zealand, but this isn't where they end up. Because you guys are here, right? So we had a bit of a look to see if we could find Evelyn and her adoptive parents, the Sissons, in the passenger records. And here they are. And here we can see, highlighted there, Thomas Sisson, Mary Ellen Sisson, and Evelyn Sisson. The great thing about it, and I'm not sure if you can see it on the end there, is it gives you details of his mother, Miss A. Sisson, and where they're living. James Street in, is it Kimberley? It looks like Nottinghamshire, so that's where they're headed.
Jesus.
That's just up the road from us.
Really? That is literally probably about 5 minutes drive tops.
Well, that's where they were headed.
That is so weird, that the mystery of it all, and it's just not so much even a stone's throw from where we live.
And there's one final thing that I want to leave you with.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, my God.
This is Evelyn Mariner Smythe. Does she look like anyone in the family?
Scaringly, a spitting image of my little girl.
It's just so Isabella. The look on her face, the mannerisms.
The almost identical resemblance to my own little girl, you know. It's just mind-boggling.
So, Alan, Eve, thank you so much for sharing this with us.
I was hoping for some answers, but I was not expecting this much, or to actually be able to see a photo of her or anything. It is just absolutely fantastic. And so thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
It was shocking to see the photo. I mean, I knew it was my great-grandma, but at the same time, it was my little girl. Almost identical. I mean, I never expected that at all.
It was like someone had taken a picture of Isabella and made it look old. It was
just identical, almost. It answered the question, but gave so many more to answer now, and it's just inspired me to keep going.
With the help of DNA testing and genealogy detective work, Eve and her son Alan now know the true origins of Eve's grandmother. And Brad's given them an insight into the story behind her adoption. In the First World War, a soldier's average life expectancy in the trenches was just 6 weeks. Student Charlotte Hall, who's from Liverpool, has found a book on World War I graves, and she wants to know whether Private R.A. Hall was her relative.
I am hoping to find out a little bit more about the documents that I found relating to a gentleman called R.A. Hall. My name's Charlotte. I'm from Manchester, but I've been living in Liverpool for over 10 years now. I'm currently a student, but I'm also working part-time. My father passed away a few years ago, and he was always interested in his family history. After he passed away and I was clearing out some of his stuff, I came across some old documents that were related to a member of family I hadn't heard of. I came across a booklet called The War Graves of the British Empire. And this was the booklet that contained information on R.A. Hall. So this is R.A. Hall's war grave memorial.
Right.
He was 23 years old when he died, and he died on the 1st of July, 1916. So I'd like to find out a little bit more about that. I think my dad was probably onto something interesting with R.A. Hall. I think he probably would have wanted to find out more himself and maybe just didn't know how to go about it. I'd like to find out more specifically where he fit in the family tree. I'd like to know what his involvement was in the war. I think it would be a really lovely tribute to my dad to kind of finish off the stuff that he started and maybe have that as his legacy.
Charlotte, thank you for joining us. We understand that you've got an interesting inquiry about this mysterious R.A. Hall.
Yeah.
And the first mention comes after your father, Michael, passed away.
I kind of wanted to find out a little bit more maybe for him. There didn't really seem to be much more information to go on.
Well, I'm happy to report that we have discovered a lot of information.
Oh, OK.
Yeah, about the life of R.A. Hall. First of all, his name was Robert Andrew Hall.
Which is interesting because my brother's called Andrew, so that's really interesting to know.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we found records of Robert's military history from 1914 onwards. Robert joined the Manchester Regiment. It was a regiment raised from local people within Manchester. This is a recruitment poster for the Powell's Battalion. It's a name that was given by a Lord Derby who thought of the idea of recruiting soldiers for the First World War who were friends, family, into one unit, one regiment, one company. The purpose was that if they were friends together, they would fight together.
Wow, OK.
Yeah, this is the time before there was compulsory recruitment. These were volunteers.
Wow, OK. That's really, it's powerful kind of hearing that. It's really kind of crazy to hear as well that he volunteered and kind of gave up his life really voluntarily rather than being conscripted.
So once we knew what battalion Robert had served in, we started to look into the archives, the war records, to find out more information. And we found this incredible picture of the 11th Platoon A Company of the 20th Battalion of the Manchester Regiment. Robert Andrew Hall is somewhere in this photograph. But we don't know exactly which man he is. You gave us the date of birth of your great-grandfather, William Hall, and we suspected that Robert could have been a close relative, as their age matched men most likely to have fought in World War I. This is a family tree. Following a close study of military, birth, and marriage records, our research revealed that Robert Hall is William's brother. How does that make you feel?
It's
overwhelming.
Yeah, it is. It is overwhelming, but it's also it's a good feeling as well. It's good to know that he is related and that he was really brave and that he voluntarily fought in the war as well.
So, Robert Andrew Hall, your great-granduncle, died on the 1st of July, 1916, on the very first day of the Battle of the Somme.
It's really sad to know that it's sad to know that he died fighting in the war, but on the first day as well, with the Battle of the Somme.
Robert's platoon arrived in France on the 9th of November, 1915. It was winter then, and they sort of had to dig in. The offensive didn't begin until July the 1st of 1916. Now, it was truly horrific, the trenches of the First World War. Knee-deep in mud, often the soldiers were covered in lice. There were rats there the size of cats. Terrible conditions. When eventually they were called up, they were expected to walk through steadily over their own lines and towards the enemy. Not to run, but to walk in steady lines. The result was carnage. Over 141 days of fighting, 1.3 million casualties. On the first day alone, 19,240 British casualties on the first day. What you see here is a map. It's a map of the field where the first offensive of the Battle of Somme took place. The blue cross there marks the line where Robert Andrew Hall fell, just a few feet away from the German lines. He made it all the way from his own lines, through no man's land. This is very, very, very unusual.
It's just really overwhelming. That he was so brave, you know.
Robert was not the only person to die on that day. That picture that you saw of those young men, 24 of those young men died on that first day. This is a will written by Robert Hall, probably when he was in those trenches. Can we read what he says?
Yeah. In the event of my death, I give the whole of my property and effects to Mary Ellen Hall.
Everything that he has, he signs back to his mother. So now, Charlotte, now you know that all of that work that your father started wasn't just for local history. This was family history, which is now entwined in some of the most important moments in world history. And the sacrifice of your particular family has been great. And you should be proud.
I am. Very.
Charlotte, thank you for coming, and I hope that that provides some closure for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
My dad probably would have been as emotional as I was today finding out that information. It just feels like missing part of the family tree. He probably would have been really impressed with today. It actually makes me feel really good that, you know, my family was bigger than I thought, and that it involved people that were so brave.
So an unknown name in a book has been revealed as Charlotte's war hero great-granduncle, Robert Hall. Next, genetic genealogist Brad Argent meets Elizabeth Cloak, who wants to learn the truth about her grandfather Henry's secret life.
The story is that my maternal grandfather, he had a family from somewhere in Yorkshire. He left them and he turned up in Northumberland, where he met and married my maternal grandmother and went on to have a very large family. But he changed his name to Harry Page. In my mother's family, she had a sister called Constance Elizabeth, and I was told that in his other family in Yorkshire, he had a daughter called Constance Elizabeth. So he had two daughters with the same name. But my mother was very upset by the revelation. It didn't come out very long before she died, but I don't know a great deal more. I'd like to know about the other family. I'd like to know how many children there were, what happened to them. Have I got any cousins now? Wouldn't it be really nice to know the whole history?
Liz, welcome.
Thank you.
So you always knew your grandfather, this man here, as Harry Page, right?
Yes.
Your grandfather.
Yes, grandfather.
So what was the rumour about his other name?
He was Pickering. They thought he may come from Leeds. They thought he may come from Pickering itself. And maybe that's where it came from. So it's all guesswork, really.
So he's a bit of a man of mystery. Now, there's a connection with a Clara, isn't there?
Yes. We think that was his first wife. Well, his wife.
There's a lot of question marks around this man. We have fragments of what is a really interesting story. So let's see if we can get documents to clarify some of that.
Okay.
So we've been doing quite a bit of research and we've got some really interesting things to tell you.
Okay.
We have actually found a marriage record. So this gives us a bit of evidence to support that family story. Right, and if you just look up the top there, you can see that's Thomas Pickering 20.
So it was Pickering then?
We're as sure as we can be that this is Thomas Pickering, or Harry Page, not least because he marries a Clara Levitt.
Yes.
Right?
Clara Levitt.
They're quite young. He's a commercial traveller, so a travelling salesman. So what we know now is on November 17th, 1900, Thomas Pickering, who you always knew as Harry Page, married a Clara Levitt in Leeds, right? Which kind of ties in to what you know,
What we thought, yes.
what you thought. Let's try and fill in some of his backstory.
That'd be good, yeah.
Right. So what we've got next is census records. Now, there's a few of them because census records are wonderful in that they tell us, they give us this snapshot of people at a point in time, and they give us really good information. And in particular, they give you relationship-based information, which is really handy. So this is the 1911 census. And in this record, we can clearly see Clara Pickering, their 3 children, Edward, Constance, and we know Constance is a bit of a theme.
Yes.
And Stanley Pickering. But there's no Thomas. We couldn't find Thomas Pickering in the 1911 census. He doesn't exist.
Right.
We couldn't find Harry Page, Thomas's alter ego, either.
No.
So maybe this is the point. Maybe this is around the time where he did step out of Thomas Pickering and became Harry Page. We don't know. What we do know is that shortly after that, he was in a relationship with your grandmother and they were having children. So I want to show you a photo now that was sent in to us by someone quite important in your story. This is a wedding photo of Edward Pickering, the son of Clara Levitt and Thomas Pickering, or Harry Page. And next to him is his mum, Clara Levitt Pickering. And no doubt, in the background,
other relatives.
Exactly.
Yes.
Other relatives of yours, family.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at what the family tree looks like now. This is your grandmother here, Catherine Hall.
Yes.
She was living in a long-term committed relationship with Harry Page.
Yeah.
Now, he was originally Thomas Pickering. His first wife was Clara Levitt. They had 3 children. As we know, we saw that in the census. Edward Thomas Pickering, Constance Pickering, and Stanley Pickering, your half-aunts and half-uncles. We know Edward had a son, your cousin, Ted. And Ted was the one that sent us the photograph. And there he is.
Wow, it's my cousin.
That's your cousin, Ted.
Yeah.
Now, Ted really wanted to be here today, but he couldn't make it.
Yeah.
So he sent a letter. Hi, long-lost cousin. You sound to be the answer to a question that has been bugging me for years. Namely, where Thomas Pickering disappeared to around 1914. Looking forward very much to meeting you, to swap tales and pictures of the Pickering family. Hope the program goes well and that you get out of it what you're after without finding too many skeletons in the closet. Here's to the future. Kindest regards, Ted Pickering.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah.
So he had a suspicion, right? There was a family rumour that Thomas Pickering had gone up north. So, I mean, it's obviously an emotional experience.
I guess it's just always been on my mind, I think, really, for the last 30 years about the other family. And I just wanted to know, we had other family out there. My mum had brothers and sisters that she had never met, and we've got aunties and uncles and cousins that we never knew. And I always wanted to know what happened to them after he just left, you know, without looking out for them, and then starting a whole new family. And because it's family and it's still quite close, because my mother's father, so it still feels, I feel for her, that she never got to know the whole story, really.
Liz, it's been a grand adventure, this story.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's quite emotional, actually. I was quite surprised at how emotional I felt. Because I've thought about this for years and years, and I always thought I was quite matter-of-fact about it. I surprised myself at how emotional I became when I found out.
Having arrived with only family fables, Elizabeth has not only acquired the facts behind her grandfather's true identity, but now has a new cousin to catch up with. Well, it's been an exciting day here in Cheshire, solving mysteries and finding lost family. Do join us next time when we're going to be giving people the chance to find their place in history. Goodbye.